Twisted Metal 2 might be the most American game ever made. And it's largely a product of its time, the 90s. Now I know that sounds like a nasty concoction, like the gaming equivalent of that fucked up pickle icy thing from Sonic. But no, Twisted Metal 2, while being schlocky and over the top, manages to rise above a very shallow and one-note premise. That being cars with guns. And for its era, the game could have been just that, a generic game with cars that shoot each other, you know, like ammunition derby or some shit. No, instead, Twisted Metal 2 is a game full of personality and story. That's right, we have an extended world in this bitch. We have drama, characters with history and depth, an implied greater world. Lore, if you will. And, well, I love that kind of stuff. That's only the icing on this so-called cake, if you will. The cake being the game you see, and that cake being moist and dense. It's got the spots where they split it in half and they added some apricot jam. What I'm trying to say is they made the gameplay real good. TM2 takes place a year after the first Twisted Metal. I don't want to get too into the first game's story, but suffice to say, the despicable fusion of comedian Carrot Top and the Cherry Pie Man character from Master of Disguise, Calypso hosts a vehicular deathmatch competition tournament across all of LA where the victor gets a Wishmaster-style wish. You know, some lawyer, self-fuck, glass door man kind of shit. Anyways, Calypso is once again hosting another tournament, but unlike Twisted Metal 1, this one spans the globe. A choice that adds a lot to the tone of the game. The first game taking place exclusively in LA added a lot to the game's more grounded B-movie tone, whereas TM2's caricatures of locations like Paris and the Amazon do a lot more for the exaggerated comic booky style on offer here. You'll select a character and enter the tournament where you'll have to eliminate all other drivers to move on to the next round, ultimately culminating in a fight against the final boss. And no, it's not like you're actually eliminating anybody. You could blast Sweet Tooth's sweet tits clean off only to see his smug face staring back at you in the next loading screen. Gameplay mostly consists of driving around, stockpiling weapons, and engaging in fights with other drivers. In addition to the weapons you'll find around the map, every character has a unique regenerating special weapon to use as well. Now, the driving itself, I won't lie, feels awkward at first. This will likely be the most difficult thing to acclimate to when starting. I remember feeling like a slippery, uncontrollable mess, and also I had a hard time playing Twisted Metal. I wrote the game off for a while because of this, in fact, but trust me, there's intention to the driving. TM2 may not feel like other driving games because it isn't. It's dancing to the beat of its own drum, and brother, once you feel that rhythm, you'll want to dance all night long. Gravity and physics in this game just don't behave how you'd expect.
Yeah, your car kind of feels magnetized to the ground.
It's hard to explain unless you just felt it. Taking ramps and slopes can send your car in all sorts of weird directions. And on faster vehicles, taking turns too quickly can cause you to slide out. I think primitive is a good way to put it. You can see where this lies on the evolutionary chain of physics in racing games. You know, it's the little fucked up fish thing with legs. The jumps, the ramps, and even the different elevations are all accounted for in a way that kinda reminds me of old Tony Hawk. Once you were familiar with the game, you just kinda knew how the ramps would launch you and how you could stick to the railings. You can kinda feel that the physics were bullshit, that there's a somewhat canned nature to how you interact with objects in the world, but it doesn't matter, and in fact it feels pretty good because you're in tune with it. Now, that's all great, but the spiciest salami was the choice to include special moves. Yeah, not unlike a fighting game. They usually consist of a string of directional inputs on the D-pad, like up, up, right, or left, right, up. Yeah, you get the idea. These abilities span from weapons like the freeze missile, which allows you to stop an enemy in place to set up for huge damage, a shield that makes you invulnerable for about 5 seconds or so. The utility of this alone is huge. There's others like the jump to inject some schmovement into the game. There are mines you can lay behind your vehicle, and even the sub-boss minion's special attack, which does massive damage but drains all your energy.
You can also turn invisible, but it's bad.
Yeah, all these special moves will cost some amount of energy. However, your energy, indicated by this little bar here, will regenerate over time. Getting a feel for the cost of certain abilities and for the pace of the energy regeneration will greatly help you out and is another added layer to the rhythm of the combat.
And I think that's a good way to describe it in general, really. There's a rhythm to the entirety of the game's combat. There's a more frantic quiet while you skulk around the outskirts of the map, searching for weapons or sitting vulnerably, firing your machine guns to open up other areas for items or secrets. And then there are the engagements where you unload everything you picked up to quickly wipe someone out while trying to take minimal damage yourself.
Now, that's not to say there aren't in-betweens. Other drivers are searching for you, and you'll frequently find yourself underprepared and suddenly in a scrappy situation with a group of enemies. Chaos can erupt quickly, and that unpredictability is what keeps the game engaging and exciting. All these choices and interactions are underpinned by the game's arcadey design. There's a life and a password system in Twisted Metal 2 that only gives you so many tries to make it to the next level, creating tension and a sense of desperation to the act of self-preservation. That's my Sane Anger lyric submission. Not to mention, the game is fairly hard. Yeah, don't expect to make it too far the first time around. Knowledge and experience is what's going to get you far in this one.
To some, this may seem annoying, like trial and error maybe, but to me, it made getting further into the levels and learning the placement of items and secrets and cool tricks like jumping from this moat onto the roofs in Paris so much more rewarding than they would have been if there wasn't a life counter putting the pressure on me to survive.
And again, this is a choice that keeps the game replayable. The frankly unfair difficulty is the reason to engage with any of these systems, and it's why 2 stands out so much against the other games in the genre. Now, despite being a disgusting old man, I didn't grow up playing this game. I came to it much later in life. And if that sounds like you, then when starting out, you'll be drawn to the heavier vehicles. It's a lot easier to get a grasp on the game when it looks like this, as opposed to this. These characters also have the most health, making mistakes less costly. As you play and get more comfortable, you'll probably migrate to the medium-speed characters, whose stats are more balanced, and eventually you'll graduate to the fastest and most fragile ones, who reward skillful driving. At least that's the path I took, and the satisfaction of learning to eventually control some of the vehicles I had initially considered impossible was very rewarding. And speaking of the characters, there are 12 available at the start, and 2 more that you can unlock with codes. Roadkill is a fairly balanced vehicle. Made up of scrap, it fires a boomerang as a special weapon, most likely in reference to that little rat kid in Mad Max 2. It's a serviceable special weapon that regenerates frequently, but its real strength lies in the extra damage it does on the way back. Its driver, Marcus Kane, is an insane man who knows he's inside a video game, which is kind of fun. Plus, he has a fishbone in his hair. There were a lot of fishbones in media for a moment there in the 90s. I just thought I'd say that. Hammerhead is a sluggish monster truck with high armor and, you'll never guess, but the ability to run over other cars. It's driven by Mike and Stu, 2 cartoonishly stupid, generic, pervy stoner characters. Not my favorite. Put them in D tier. Outlaw 2 is a cop car with middling stats like Roadkill, but feels a bit faster and looser with slightly lower health. Its special is unique in that when it's used, it will automatically shock anyone within a radius of Outlaw. The driver is Jamie Roberts, a generic good guy cop character and the sister of Outlaw 1's driver from the first game. Warthog is the military Hummer that fires red, white, and blue homing missiles. His extremely low top speed is offset with crazy amounts of armor, and his special is simple to use and hits hard. You'd expect some generic G.I. Joe or Rambo type guy to be the driver here, but no, instead we have this feeble old man in search of reclaiming his youth. I know the feeling, brother. You know, as a side note, sometimes when he shows up as an enemy, he kind of just sits around doing very little. I can't tell if this is a bug or if he's having a senior moment, if you will. Mr. Grimm is the Grim Reaper on a motorcycle. I can't tell if that's incredibly dumb or cool, but regardless, that's the caliber of character we have here in Twisted Metal 2. You know, a playable tattoo. He'll die if you sneeze on him, but with a high top speed and one of the most devastating special attacks in the game, your skill is really the only limiting factor when driving him. Thumper is a pink lowrider with a flamethrower. It swaps top speed for health, making it a durable car, but with plenty of maneuverability still. The special is really good too. If you can catch somebody with a freeze blast, you can cook them in place with a full duration of the attack, which does a shitload of damage. It's not uncommon to melt somebody down from full health in one interaction. A very solid choice in general. Spectre is an old white Corvette. He's the zoner of the game, if you will. Another car in the genre of fast with no health, but his special, the Ghost Missile, homes through walls and level geometry to come find you. Yeah, his shit is wall hacks. Not the most damaging, but reliable on a pinch and very solid for cheesing, as you'd imagine. Unfortunately, this also makes Spectre annoying as shit to face, especially if you're low on health and you're just trying to get the fuck out of there. Fun little side note, Spectre's driven by the Street Fighter character Ken Masters. Yeah, he's looking a little different. I'm not really sure where this falls into the timeline. Maybe this is right before Street Fighter 2010. I'm not really sure. Twister is a Formula 1 car that feels way too fast. Like, it's hard to believe they actually allowed a car to go this fast in this crusty old engine. On top of that, her special turns her car into a tornado. Yeah, it turns upright and spins around, sucking people in and bashing them into each other. When used properly, this special can be devastating. But I say properly because it's just as easy to get yourself mulched up in the swirling torrent of destruction that you become. So it's best to pair this with a shield and like napalm missiles or whatever other things. But I mean, shield for sure. You gotta protect yourself while you're in there. A high execution character, very fun, one of my favorites. Axel, poster child and surely the most memorable character outside of Sweet Tits, is a 14-foot tall man trapped between two giant wheels. Get it? He's literally a fucking Axel. Certainly one of the more out there concepts, and it's a concept that really falls apart under even the smallest scrutiny. I mean, you know, like, what powers the wheels? How does he eat? Where does he sleep? In a garage? How does he shit? Does somebody take off his pants for him to shit? Do they hold a bucket? I don't know, whatever. Despite just being a guy with blue jeans on, Axel is pretty tanky, with decent speed and handling to boot. His special is an energy blast that hits everyone around him. That paired with his unusually high ramming damage makes him a great pick for new players. Axel is easy mode. Mr. Slam is, despite what you think, not what your dad calls me, but actually a character in the game Twisted Metal 2. It's a slow, heavily armored vehicle with probably the coolest special in the game. Not the best, mind you, but this shit's exciting every time you land it. This is the fucking SPD of this game. And the even cooler part is while you're slamming these guys, you could still shoot your other weapons and specials to up the damage even further. The purple hearse, Shadow, is another iconic vehicle introduced to the series here. It's a bit on the slower and more armored side. Doesn't steer so good either on account of being real long. His special is a flying spirit that manifests as a shadow on the ground. Essentially, it acts like a moving remote bomb. You fire it once to launch it and once again to detonate. And due to some weird coding fuckery, just like the remote bombs, it does significantly more damage on a sloped surface. Grasshopper is the obnoxiously green and elusive dune buggy. Like most, I'd imagine, I've spent the least amount of time with her. Her weak armor and slow speed aren't worthwhile trade-offs for a special weapon. A special that sends her flying up into the air and then awkwardly shooting off towards the nearest enemy to ram them. Sure, with the shield move and some remote bombs, you could turn this into a devastating attack, but the exact same thing could be said for Twister, and Twister's a lot faster than Grasshopper and just about as weak, so what's the point? Hard mode? To get the most juicy lore in the game? To torment Pat? Sweet Tooth is, of course, playable, but only through a code. Yeah, he's more akin to a mini-boss or something in this one, and that may seem surprising, but, you know, his character wasn't exactly nailed down back then. He went from this, to this. Not exactly how he's known today. I honestly prefer him here to the slab of fuck that he ended up being later. Yeah, sure, Demonic Clown is hardly original, but it's a type of edge that I could at least get behind. I think his elevation to secret character here probably only helped his popularity and mystique going forward. Anyways, Sweet Tooth is sluggish, handles like shit, but he has a ton of health, good ram damage, and a reliable special. That special being the Napalm Cone, which oscillates up and down and knocks enemies back on hit. And according to the first game, it's literally napalm ice cream? Yeah, it comes in vanilla and chocolate. Hey, wait a minute. That's fucking strawberry. Minion, the final boss from Twisted Metal 1, has been demoted to sub-boss this time around, but unlike 1, he's now playable with a code. Minion is a dark gray APC driven by a literal demon from hell. What could be said? I mean, he's got crazy health and high stats all around. His special is basically a souped-up version of Warthogs that also adds a freeze blast in just for good measure. Yeah, stupid OP, but that's the appeal of Minion. An especially cathartic character when the game's been kicking your ass and you just want to turn your brain off and steamroll everybody. Of course, picking your vehicle is only half the battle, because you'll still have to deal with all the vehicles you didn't pick as enemies, and yes, every vehicle behaves uniquely. That opponent preview screen could spell out Doom or Easy Street depending on what vehicles make an appearance. Some of the characters are small potatoes, no biggie, but others can be extremely dangerous on certain maps or just constantly a problem. Axel being one you never want to see, and characters like Twister, you know, the character that becomes a tornado, are extremely unfortunate opponents for levels with bottomless pits. There are quirks to dealing with them all. For example, you never really want to be behind Shadow, or you'll end up eating his special. Fighting him to the side is the safest. Or characters like Mr. Slam and Hammerhead, who will repeatedly fish for a freeze so they could drive up and slam you or hammer your head respectively. Sweet Tooth will never stop firing the ice cream cones, it never stops. Warthog loves to putz around like the old bitch he is, pooping out mines, and Thumper will use his flamethrower and napalm shots to really drive home the fire theme. Mr. Grimm will troll around the edges of the map, taking pot shots and waiting till the competition is thinned out to strike. And Grasshopper jumps around like an asshole. All these behaviors go a long way to making each car feel individual and keeping the game fresh each time you play.
Enemies are chosen at random every time, and those different combinations across the different maps can offer you all sorts of strange and new interactions, even if some of those interactions are complete horseshit.
Yes, while the enemies may have many differences, they do all share one thing in common, and that is the AI blatantly cheats.
Yes, you'll often catch them spamming special moves way beyond the amount the player could ever hold.
Or spamming things like the freeze missile, which are limited by energy for the player, but not for them. They also won't take damage if you're too far away from them, presumably as a quick and dirty way to keep enemies from randomly dying around the map from bumping into walls or driving into hazards. And if that weren't enough for you, they're all trying to kill you. Yeah, it seems like they're all partaking in a free-for-all, but upon closer inspection, you'll notice pretty quick that they hardly do any damage to each other, and the second you get close to any of them, they'll drop the act and turn on you proper. Yes, this game is bullshit. I agree, it absolutely is. But weirdly, I kinda don't care. I think, again, it's due to the arcading nature. Outside of multiplayer, really all there is to do is progress your way through the ladder, mastering the different levels, vehicles, and weapons. And because it's bullshit, everything you can do to gain an advantage feels like a huge gain. You do only have 2 lives to clear out each level. On a more mechanical side, becoming better at the inputs for the special abilities is rewarding too. Yes, pushing up right while maneuvering a car and trying to aim said car is kinda weird, but it does become more natural, and once it does, it feels so good to roll into a situation confident that the moment the fire gets turned towards you, you'll have shields up and ready. The shield alone lets you dictate and even turn the pace of combat. Tossing on the shield to avoid all damage as you race towards the enemy car and loading every weapon you've picked up feels great. The energy abilities, more than anything, are what I think really sets the gameplay above what could have otherwise been a pretty cut and dry experience. Because all the abilities are independent from firing your weapons, you're free to build combinations of actions to achieve greater mobility and offense. It's what allows Twister, for example, to combo or special with the shield while dropping and detonating remote bombs. It's a combo. Even the feeling of energy recharging and the cost of certain abilities will become secondhand, and the energy management aspect becomes part of the flow of the gameplay. Getting better at this system had me going from fighting Minion like this to this. The levels do a good job at constantly ramping up the difficulty. We start in the wreckage left over from the first game, the ruins of LA. It's a nice, mostly flat area with a little road running around it and plenty of little set pieces. A nice little fire pit to jump over, this weird power generator thing that you can use to shoot lightning out of, a little tunnel section over here. Plenty of health and weapons, tons of stuff to shoot like these fast food joints, and of course tons of little tiny digitized men to run over, which yes is morbid, but it's fun. What can I say, I'm a sucker for little digitized guys. I can't help but imagine the day that the devs had all their friends come over and put goofy costumes on to take pictures of them to be in their car combat game. Anyways, it's a good starting level, although I feel like 4 opponents would have maybe been more appropriate. 6 is a lot when you're new to the game. Maybe the idea was like it was a barrier to entry, like if you can't do this, you're not leaving LA, so to speak, almost symbolically trapped in the first game, not cool enough to handle the big load Twisted Metal 2 is shooting your way. That or they just wanted to show off what they were capable of. I mean, 6 guys in the first level is a lot more impressive than 4 would have been, so maybe it was based on that solely, I don't know. After that, we're off to Moscow. Now, don't feel bad if you get fucked here. This is likely where a lot of runs will die. This map is mean as shit, even if there is one less opponent than last time. It's essentially this big bowl with this upper toilet seat area crisscrossed with these bridges, and that's about it. The biggest problem with this is Twisted Metal 2 doesn't do verticality so well, so when you're trying to fire up or down these slopes, it's haphazard at best. If you aren't on the slope, but just at the base, you'll fire straight into it, and if you're at the top, it's a crapshoot on if your weapons will want to go down into the pit or not. Also, worse than any of that shit, there's no fucking weapons on this level, or health too for that matter, so if you didn't bring some from the last level, it's gonna be slow going. Plus, the limited health just means stretching your lives out is harder. It's a speed bump for sure. Next up is Paris, the most iconic level from this game, I'd think. It's certainly the level I associate with it. Thankfully, unlike Moscow, Paris is fairly open with 2 distinct sections divided by a river. One side consists of the Louvre and blocks of the city with statues and parked cars to shoot for pickups. The other side is the Eiffel Tower, which of course can be blown up. This shit was pretty goddamn ambitious on the PS1. It's not just a fun effect either. After it's destroyed, chunks of it now function as bridges connecting the rooftops, opening up a whole new area to explore and fight in. This level just oozes personality, and it's just a blast, honestly. Amazonia Firewalk is where Twisted Metal 2 really dials up the comic book bullshit. We have a stone octagonal arena and some islands and side areas interconnected with various bridges and warps and tunnels. Of course, all of this, though, is surrounded by lava. Strangely, lava that only kills you very slowly, but lava nonetheless. Feels like a good escalation. The strange layout and the chip damage from the lava dictate combat into choke points around the main formation. Lots of frantic skirmishes to be had here. And if that weren't enough, after you've killed all the normal opponents, you're pitted against Minion, the boss from Twisted Metal 1. He rises from the lava, which is very cool imagery, but it does raise a lot of questions, namely like what the fuck is he doing down there? As covered in the vehicle section, yes, Minion is tough. Just be careful when you're in front of him. His special hurts and it'll also freeze you in place to eat another one. Luckily, he's a bit slow to turn around, so you could kind of bully him pretty well from the sides and back. Another excellent level. Moving on. New York Rooftops. This level is where the stakes dramatically change. Gravity is now a major threat, as this level sees you racing across the fucking rooftops in New York. The layout is weird, and verticality plays a major factor. Beyond falling to your death, I mean. There are high and low sections to explore, and even a building with an elevator shaft spanning multiple levels. There's a parking garage, and a pool with quite possibly the funniest NPC in the game. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by this level until you can get a firm grasp on the layout, but even when you do, it can still be nerve-wracking to drive around here. Worse still, if you wind up with opponents like Axel or Sweet Tooth, whose special move knocks you back, you could very well find yourself falling off after getting hit just once or twice. I haven't talked much about the music so far, but it's all fun stuff, a lot of cheesy, shreddy 90s guitar shit. However, New York gets a much more cinematic soundtrack, an orchestral arrangement full of sways and suspense. It really feels like shit is escalated. And as a side tangent, that's a feeling I really miss from older games, like Genesis-era shit, where the only way to know what was later on into a game was by playing it and getting better to get there yourself. I'm not trying to say that was the best approach. Honestly, I don't want to have to become an expert at every game I play just to beat it. I'm just saying it was nice to play something that made me feel a bit of that. That mystique when you finally make it further than you had, and there's so much more on the line now, but you're also taking all the new environments in, desperately trying to survive and hold on to your progress in this new confusing space. That's what New York kind of represents to me, and yeah, it sucks when you just get frozen and fucked off the edge, or one bowling bomb sends you careening into the streets below, but it's all part of the experience. New York is a good level. Antarctica takes the ideas introduced by New York and goes even further with them. Once again, falling to your death is largely in play here. However, the new spin is that the level is falling apart as the match goes on, shrinking section by section. The sections themselves are fairly simplistic. You have a trench running along and things like chunks of an old ship and some ramps and slopes made of ice that dot the landscape. Now, as hard as this level can be, you can cheese it with bombs by just going through this teleport and sitting here and blasting anybody off the edge that follows you through. This does kind of take away the threat of Antarctica, but hey, if you're desperate, sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do, and I'd be willing to bet that every level probably has something similar to this or some sort of exploit. This is just one I know about. In a genius move, Twisted Metal 2 decides for the penultimate level to, instead of upping the ante further, even more verticality, more danger, some new gimmick, it instead decides to strip everything back to a completely flat rectangle. Yes, Holland is the final destination, if you will. Just a flat-ass map with 9 opponents. And yeah, even though conceptually we didn't go bigger or bolder, this shit is way harder. There's nothing left for me to cheese with. Part of what made the enemies cheating okay was that I was the player. I could exploit their AI or use all sorts of bullshittery and fuckery to my advantage. Well, all that is gone now. Lane bare. I just have to drive and shoot to the best of my abilities in an all-out brawl. Now, is the level most likely a small flat rectangle because they needed the memory space to render all 9 opponents on the map at the same time? Most certainly yes, I'd say. I know an old Laffy Jaffe, he probably would have wanted to do some dumb shit here instead, but regardless, Holland is genius, hell, tasteful, dare I say. Yeah, tasteful. Tasteful in the game about gun cars. And then finally, it's Hong Kong Crunch, a sprawling city with wide, long corridors and a central area with some tricky ramps and an upper balcony to jump to. The streets themselves don't really leave much room for clean maneuvering, leading a lot of encounters to become quick drive-by type affairs. This can be particularly dangerous if you have someone on your ass, especially if you're driving one of the slower vehicles. Do you risk the damage it would take to turn around, or do you gun it for the corner and hope to buy yourself some space that way? Health and ammo are also spread out here as well, further encouraging a more hit-and-run playstyle. And some of the pickups, like this ever-so-important health, is in a pretty intricate spot. It's not something to easily grab in a pinch. And of course, being the final map, this is where we face the game's final boss, Darktooth. Seemingly the driver of Yellow Jacket, the taxi cab from Twisted Metal 1, now piloting a monster truck version of Sweet Tooth, complete with a slick black paint job. Yeah, I don't really get it either. Like, I get that Charlie Kane, the driver of Yellow Jacket in the first game, is supposed to be Sweet Tooth's dad, but if he won the tournament and became Calypso's new champion, that would mean he would have had to kill Sweet Tooth to win the tournament, so I don't know.
The way you took out your own son. Oh. What do you mean?
And he doesn't really seem to give a shit, except when you do it in 2, he's really upset, so I don't know.
Yeah, I think this is another example of Twisted Metal 2 eschewing substance for style, but this isn't really necessarily a bad thing. I think when talking about old video games, it's easy to forget that in this era it wasn't uncommon for things to just be, video gamey. So within the story maybe it doesn't make much sense, but seeing how Sweet Tooth is almost a sub-boss himself, it naturally makes sense that the boss would be a souped-up version of him. I mean, his face is in the fucking logo, for Christ's sake. And I don't really know where else to fit this, but while talking about the logo, you ever notice the little 2 here? Kind of looks like the 2 from Halo 2? I don't know, it's just kind of a weird thing I noticed. I think in terms of challenge, Darktooth puts up a pretty good fight as the game's last hurdle. Don't let his size fool you, he can move pretty fast, and as you'd imagine, he does a lot of damage and he can run you over too. As for machine guns, he instead constantly fires a barrage of napalm cones, Sweet Tooth's special weapon. He can also roll giant bombs with his face on them, and he'll even use these to flush you out if you try to hide from him in the subway tunnel. He can also fire his head off to smash and ignite your vehicle, and obviously he has a shitload of health. Oh, and on top of that, he gets a phase 2 where he's just the head, but this is easier overall. He could be quite scary to take on. You don't want to get caught in a chase down the long streets without some turbo on hand. He'll have no problem running you down and bombarding you head on. Again, hit and run tactics work best here. But with enough time, you'll be disrespecting this guy just like Minion. And yeah, with that all out of the way, the last thing to do is watch our ending FMV, which has a nice comic book style, and every character gets one. What can I say, these are really charming. You know, sure, some of them feel a little empty or off in their execution, but on the whole, they're a lot of fun and in some cases pretty engaging. Some standouts for me are Twister's ending, where she wishes to go faster than anyone ever has and ends up driving back in time to the prehistoric age before realizing she's out of gas and gets unceremoniously stepped on by a dinosaur. We then cut to her helmet in a history museum. Or Mike and Stu's ending, where they wish to fly, and after being granted their wish, they jump off the skyscraper they're standing on top of, only for Calypso to cheekily pull out their plane tickets as they hit the ground below. Or Roadkill's ending, where he wishes to escape the tournament, and he wakes up in a hospital surrounded by his family, and it's revealed he's been in a coma caused by a huge accident, along with several other suspiciously familiar characters. And you know what? I like Sweet Tooth's ending. He wants to become a bug, and that's about it. And yes, that's stupid and random, but you know, it works for me. His little melted candle face on this worm is hilarious. I mean, plus he just wanted a paper sack in the first game, so it's not like this is some kind of character betrayal or anything. Not that these games are consistent with anything anyways. Check out the description for Minion after you've unlocked him with the code. That's kind of fun. It breaks the fourth wall in a similar way to like Metal Gear or something. Minion's ending is one of the few where Calypso gets completely beaten, a perfect capstone for steamrolling the game with a boss character. Outside of single player, the tournament can also be completed in co-op, and it's been one of my favorite co-op experiences in recent memory. The arcadey elements are pushed even further in this mode, as you have no passwords to continue with. Instead, you share 5 lives total for the entire game. Yeah, don't expect to beat this on your first couple attempts. In addition to general familiarity with the game's controls and mechanics, map knowledge will go a long way here. Every hidden pickup, secret area, and trick you can pick up will be invaluable to stretching those lives out as long as you can. The co-op tournament only expands upon the fun that's already present in Twisted Metal 2, and it's a great way to introduce new people to the game. That said, there were some sacrifices that had to be made to get this thing working in co-op. For one, the frame rate in general feels less stable than the single-player mode, and on some maps like New York, whole sections have been removed to help with the loading. Yeah, and outside of that, all that's really left is Challenge Match, which is just a free play mode that lets you choose maps and computer opponents to fight against. Of course, there's also a traditional versus mode, but this will live and die by having friends to play this with. Going head-to-head with friends could be more fun than even the tournament, but your mileage may vary. Outside of that, there's a couple secret maps exclusive to this mode to check out if nothing else. And yeah, that's Twisted Metal 2, a primitive game elevated by an ambitious and passionate team. It's not the kind of game I could say belongs among the greatest of all time, but it's a game that's genuinely special. One that rewards you for giving your time to it, and one that's so easy to go back to time and time again.
Oh, that's strange. It tastes like... Ah!